Hello and welcome along to Not Another Sports Pods, episode 4 with myself, David Windsor, and Mr. Ollie Wilson, who's enjoying a nice Saturday evening goblet of wine for those watching on video on YouTube. You've actually just missed about 25 minutes of Ollie Wilson and I in our I'm not going to say old age, Ollie, in our middle age, just eulogizing about the English countryside and castles and all the rest of it. That was a beautiful little half hour pre-pod, Ollie, but yeah, I know you're in Northumberland at the moment in the north playing a bit of golf.
I've crossed the border. I'm in Scotland now. Yeah, so if we're talking about the England game, I know we're going to be. To be honest, the conversation we've just had about castles and like the English countryside and everything, that's the kind of team talk that Gareth Southgate just needs to use for these England games because that got me feeling all patriotic and the chest pumping a little bit. We weren't being too kind of emotional about it, just describing. Yeah, it's very pleasant in that part.
I was nearly breaking out into Jerusalem, Ollie. I don't know about you. It was lovely stuff.
Like I said, I mean, I was in God's country earlier today, but now I've crossed the border into Scotland, and discussions of the Euros will have to be kept down rather quietly in the Airbnb I'm in, I think. But yeah, no, it's it's a beautiful part of the world. Looking forward to more England at the Euros, Dave. I didn't think we'd be saying that after everybody said Switzerland are going to do them.
How are we still in this tournament? Before we talk about the fact that England are not just still in this tournament, but 2 games away from lifting their first international trophy since 1966, Mr. Wilson, I just want to talk about something else. Basically, the England team and the formation switch was leaked 2 days before tonight's game, right? So like, all the newspapers, 48 hours in advance, had the fact that Southgate was going to this back 3 or back 5, if you like, and basically had the exact team. Ollie, how can that happen? Like, not all training sessions have to be open. You're allowed like a certain amount open, a certain amount behind closed doors. And surely the whole point of switching formation in some ways, I get that Switzerland would have done their preparation for numerous different England formations. But if you change your formation in the middle of the tournament, half the benefit of that is the element of surprise. So the Swiss coach, at least when he saw that team sheet, would think, oh, wow, okay, we that was like right down on my list of what we'd expect. So that just annoyed me that 2 days before kickoff, everyone in Europe and the world can see exactly what England were going to do. That should not come out. And a watertight, solid camp, that doesn't come out, in my opinion.
Okay, but why would somebody want it out? Somebody would want it out to take the pressure off, for instance, someone like Southgate or the players in that side, because the English media have been hounding during this tournament for change and to move to a 3-4-3 or something similar like that, to introduce wing backs in, to have Bellingham and Foden just sitting off Kane but together in the centre and using others to provide the width in the side. So maybe it's actually a sign that the media, however much they want to play this kind of siege mentality, we don't pay attention to any of it. It gets into the players. Obviously, it gets into the players, it gets into the manager, it gets into the coaching staff, everybody. And it causes potentially unrest inside the England camp. And so somebody's decided that the better thing to do is to leak it out there to then at least temper down the negative attitude that we kind of discussed that was taking place even during that Slovakia game in the build-up to Bellingham's equaliser and the eventual kind of winner, and everybody was waiting for let's bring the sword of Damocles down on this. Right, well, let's take that sword of Damocles away. Look, we're doing what you want us to do. We're going to change it. Oh, I can't believe somebody's leaked it. Oh, crazy. Nothing is leaked as well. Like, everybody knows, it's not a leak. It's being given out by somebody through a connected channel. Like, politicians leak things to get stuff out there. Same thing happens in sport.
To soften the media before. So you're suggesting that within the England camp, someone's made the call to kind of give the media that information so the media can get a little bit more on side and kind of soften their stance pre-game and think, oh, okay, at least he's trying to change it. We've been not very good for 4 games, at least. Interesting. Because I saw that and I just thought, I don't get that. I think if you really believe in what you're doing, you really believe that this tactical switch is going to make a difference, you would want Switzerland, forget the media, forget everyone. Like, your group would want Switzerland to know about that as late as possible, which is what, an hour 15 before kickoff. So, I don't know. I just thought that was weird that it was leaked 2 days before kickoff. The benefit of that, I didn't really get. I see what you're saying, but
it shouldn't matter whether the Swiss know the exact tactics that England are going to play or not, because this is an England side that should be able to get past 90% of the sides at this tournament, whether they know what England are going to do or not, because of the quality that is running through the whole of this England team. And the starting 11 that went out tonight, I think, was probably Southgate still is best starting 11 with trying to put players into better positions that they know how to play. So whether the Swiss know or not, like two days isn't enough time to read and react to a system that you don't have any game tape on anyway. And B, it just shouldn't matter. Like these games, no disrespect to the Swiss side, but mano a mano, there aren't many, if any, Swiss players in that side that are getting in and pushing some of those England players out of that starting 11 at all. So none of it should matter. England should be winning these games, winning them in a far better manner than they've gone through this whole group stage and, of course, the first couple of games of the knockout stage. But they're here, and it is... I mean, we're recording this right now.
Match winners, Ollie. Match winners. That's what we've got. Forget the collective. Like, we've got match winners for the first time. And not just one of them, not just two of them. We've got 4 or 5 match winners. And maybe that's why it's coming home.
Well, match drawers inside 90 minutes. It's match drawers. It's not match winners. I mean, we're like the Portuguese. We're like the Portuguese.
Well, it's match winners in the sense that Tony comes off the bench, scores a pen. Palmer comes off the bench, scores a pen. Trent Alexander-Arnold comes off the bench, scores a pen. All of those are great penalties. Trent Alexander-Arnold, arguably, you know, that's a match winning pen. I say match drawers. I take your point, but no, I just think there's... By the way, those 5 penalties were the best 5 penalties I've seen from England in a long, long time.
Yeah, no, and... It was interesting. I was listening to Matthew Upson was talking about it on 5 Live. I listened to Extra Time actually in the car this evening, and he was saying, "Oh, they'll have worked on this in training. They'll have done this. They'll know the order. They'll know the players." And we kind of heard that all before from Southgate. But actually, that was a penalty, 5 penalties that made you think, "Oh, England have actually prepared these penalties for the first time in forever." Unlike when, you know, they made the decision to bring Saka on in the Euro final without him having kicked a ball, and then he takes the penalty anyway. Probably the same thing had happened, except this time everybody was given at least 5 minutes to get into the game, to get kind of up to speed, up to pace, get a couple of feels of the ball, and then go out and execute, which is what they did. And that's the other thing. Like, again, we're bemoaning and belittling Southgate, and there have been numerous things that he's done throughout his England tenure that haven't been great as an England manager. But do we look now at tonight and at least think, okay, well, he's learned that you can't just bring somebody on with 10 seconds to go to take penalties. Bring them on. And we've bemoaned the lack of changes during games, the lack of substitutions. I mean, I was in a pub in Northumberland watching the second half, and as soon as the 3 changes were made after Switzerland went 1-0 up, it was, "Oh, now he's making changes. Oh, now he's making changes." And I get it. It's frustrating. But that starting 11 should be able to beat any of those sides if they play to the sum of their parts in this tournament. And so he's backed them. And then when he's gone behind, he's made changes. Those changes have worked out. They've created goals that have kept them in matches. And then he's learned from what happened at Euro 2021/2020 and has brought players on for the penalty shootout and given them more time to be prepared and match ready to go and finish and do what they need to do in that penalty shootout. So belittle him all you want, but there are steps that are being made, like slowly but surely. I can't believe we're kind of saying this like a child almost to Gareth Southgate, but like you're slowly getting there and doing the kind of right things every so often. So,
yeah, I also just want to say, Xherdan Shaqiri in the depths of extra time nearly won it from a corner, and he didn't, so it'll get forgotten in the in the masses of footballing like layers of history. But if Xherdan Shaqiri scores from a corner at that moment in late in extra time in the quarterfinals of the Euros, it goes down as one of the absolute greatest ever, and it will get forgotten. But it was an incredible one because he'd go in for goal. It's not just lucky corner. He knows exactly what he's doing. Pickford even turns around and gives him like the smile and the thumbs up. So there's one of those kind of lost footballing moments, Ollie. Everyone's got a few of those that they remember that just weren't actually big moments, but they so nearly could have been.
Does Pickford go into the pantheon of England goalkeeping blunders if that goes in? I know Shaqiri means it, but he should never be beaten by a corner, right? And do you remember North Macedonia? England played North Macedonia down at Southampton one night. And I'm pretty sure it was a friendly, but North Macedonia scored directly from a corner, and it was considered like a huge low point. Obviously, you've got David Seaman with the Ronaldinho goal at 2002 World Cup, etc. Does that go into the pantheon of England goalkeeping blunders?
Yeah. Yeah, it does, because you can't score direct from a corner because there's only 2 places it can go. And I think also Xherdan Shaqiri's tried to do that before. So if someone's done their prep and they've properly prepped Jordan Pickford, then he should know that maybe that's going to happen. And potentially that's why Jordan Pickford kind of turns around and looks at Xherdan Shaqiri, be like, I should have known you were going to do that. Didn't potentially sort of know at that moment. But yeah, I just love sporting moments that just will get forgotten, but was so nearly like, if that goes in, people talking about that for 20, 30, 50 years.
What's your peak of those then? It can be any sport
Um,
as well.
oh, right on the spot, Mr. Wilson. I'm going to say Pele's nearly goal. I think it's against Uruguay. Do you know? Was it against you? I can't remember who it's against. It's
Grounds
when
the
Pele
keeper.
basically, yeah, like the ball's coming and 99.999999 carry on that for as long as you want of players take the touch, and Pele doesn't. It's so difficult in audio to describe that moment. And if you're one of our younger listeners, you won't have a clue what I'm talking about. You've got to go onto YouTube and look at the Pele like near miss dummy goal against someone. And I think it's against Uruguay when he basically runs round the goalkeeper, doesn't touch it. And it's just, I said in a recent pod, Ollie, that I just love goals that are just totally unique and I haven't seen before or since. And that would have been had it gone in, but it didn't.
Yeah. I think mine is, there's like one of the most famous Super Bowls is the New England Patriots play the Seattle Seahawks, and Malcolm Butler provides an interception at the goal line to win it for the New England Patriots when the Seahawks are literally a yard away from scoring a touchdown to win the Super Bowl. But there's a play before that where to get them into the position down towards the 1 yard line, Doug Baldwin makes like a juggling catch where as he's falling, he's juggling it and it kind of comes off his leg and then he catches it and it never touches the ground. And I was at the stadium and I was like, he's caught that, it's not touched the ground. And the commentators even on TV were like, has he? What? And if the Seahawks win that Super Bowl, that's considered one of the greatest ever catches of all time. And now it's just like a nearly moment before what was then the greatest interception of all time in a Super Bowl to win it. And it's just like, that went from being American footballing greatness, a legendary play, where like the gloves will probably get put in, the Hall of Fame of the receiver if Doug Baldwin makes that catch and they go on and win the Super Bowl, and instead he makes the catch and they don't win the Super Bowl, and it's like, nice, yeah, unlucky.
It is crazy. People do remember this one, but like Gaza's stretch in the semis at Euro 96 as well, where it's maybe like 2 inches away from clipping his studs. And people do remember that one. But if that goes in, I don't know.
What about
you could live and die with these hypotheticals. But
Bayern hitting the crossbar against United in the Champions League final? Like, if that goes in, it's suddenly 2-0 and it's like, yeah, it's probably game over at that point. Yeah, there's some great moments. Send them in. Wilson and Windsor podcast at gmail.com.
100%. Maybe we do a little summer bonus feature on the moments that are going to change sport.
Can we just quickly, by the way,
yeah,
everybody's slagged off a lot of this England team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Pickford's had a good tournament. Jordan Pickford has had a really good tournament, and no one's really giving him any flowers for it. It's like, you're a goalkeeper, you're doing your job, well done. But you can see how irate he is at the defence in front of him when they're sitting back so often and they're inviting sides on, like they invited the Swiss on before Ibolo's goal earlier today. And Pickford's come up with some decent saves. He's tried to marshal that back line and organise it as best he can. He was great in the penalty shootout tonight. It just deserves a bit of love, I feel. Like,
do you think everyone's guilty of this in football? People make their opinions about footballers and that's it. And I think a lot of people, potentially myself included, have kind of made their opinion about Jordan Pickford, and so it'd have to do something absolutely exceptional for me to think he was an exceptional goalkeeper. It's kind of like the way pre-tournament, a huge bulk of the media had decided that Trent Alexander-Arnold's not a central midfield player, and he had one game in about 10 minutes of a 1.5 games or something to prove he was like a world-class central midfielder, when in reality you need half a season to see if that's going to work or not. And I just think some people have already decided what they think about things before they actually watch what's unfolding in front of their eyes. And Jordan Pickford's a good example of that. I think just because he doesn't look like a Buffon or a Schmeichel do you know what I mean? So he's smaller, he's what, 6'1" maybe? I think just because his frame's smaller, it's like the optics for me, just it doesn't scream world-class goalkeeper. But actually, if you look what he does, as you say, he's been fantastic this tournament. And fantastic for England in general.
Did you know that they call him up in Newcastle whenever he plays up here or up this part of the world? They call him the T-Rex because of his short arms.
Yeah, I've heard that, yeah.
I hadn't heard that one. Somebody told me that today. I was like, yeah, I mean, I get it, like, especially for a goalkeeper, but they're not that small, and it doesn't really seem to work.
And he's he's bigger than probably 90% of the UK population as well. It's just in the context of like when he's surrounded by massive centre backs, and when everyone's so used to goalkeepers being so tall now, he just looks a bit skinny.
And he's got a baby face as well. That's what doesn't help him, because he doesn't look like a leader. He's kind of got the floppy hair at the moment, and he's got a bit of a baby face. Whereas
Cheeky chappy as well, I think.
yeah, a bit of a wild card in that eccentric goalkeeper kind of way. But then with the baby face and at the moment the haircut, it almost screams kind of like juvenility, I think, at the moment. So you look at like a Buffon, as you mentioned, or a Casillas or someone else. Particularly Casillas was on the stage from so early on, but then you saw him mature with age like a fine Spanish wine. Buffon became this like grizzled looking, he had the short sleeves, but he had the rough beard and the kind of raggy hair going with it, and it screams.
But still look great in his early 40s, Buffon.
Obviously, yeah, it still looks great now on the bench for the Italian national team. But he looked like a goalkeeper that had like seen some stuff, and like that gave him authority and a bit more of that kind of commanding presence. Whereas Pickford doesn't scream of that, but he does a really good job, and I think he's been really good this tournament, and I think he's probably one of the few England players that you'd be able to point out and say, yeah, has been good every single game so far, which I don't think there's a single player in this side that you can say that at the moment. But
no, I mean, the semi-finals, Ollie, then. I mean, I can't really believe this England team are there, but we are. And yeah, I don't know. What can you say? It's Turkey are 1-0 up against the Netherlands as we're recording this, actually. I don't think England would have a preference, really. I mean, historically, you'd probably want to avoid the Dutch just because they're a bigger footballing nation with a richer history. But in terms of the actual quality of the squads and starting 11, I think you're splitting hairs, really. So it doesn't really matter from England's perspective. But England will be favourites, no?
If it's Turkey, 100%, yeah. I mean,
I'd say against the Dutch as well. Dutch have lost games in this. They lost one game in the group stage, didn't they? Look patchy in the groups.
But when they've played well, they've played
unlike
really
the mighty
well.
England.
We've not seen. I was going to say, yeah, that rock solid. You know what you're getting with England. It's not going to be interesting. It's not going to be good. It's going to be nail biting. And yet, there's still almost as soon as they score, you're like, oh, they're going through. It still was just no doubt in my mind as soon as Saka got the equaliser tonight, much like the Bellingham equaliser. Oh, England are doing this, aren't they? Yeah, that's the sucker punch. Late on, boom, there we go. And in fairness, just going quickly back to this kind of England fallout in general, like Kane was saying, and I think Saka was saying as well, it shows how much we can rally and all this kind of stuff. And there is something to be said in that there's a never say die attitude, and they've come back now from twice late in games to be able to get over the line eventually. What I think every England fan would quite like is to not have to go through any of that crap, to go through the misery of watching a really dull, boring side underplay themselves through a tournament and just cling on with a moment of greatness right at the end. I mean, Saka's goal was a beautiful strike tonight, and he picks his corner perfectly. But yeah, going into the semi-finals, I mean, I said this a few weeks ago, like, they can play rubbish and they still might win it. And it will just be such a flat win. There'll be no kind of, isn't that, Chiellini-Bonucci partnership something to die for at centre-backs? Look at what the Italians had. We were kind of cooing about the Italians last time when they won it. Won the Euros, obviously, at Wembley against England. When France or Argentina have won the World Cup, it's been, but you give anything for an Mbappe, or for, how good is Giroud been, or N'Golo Kante anchoring the midfield, all this kind of stuff. Obviously, Messi for Argentina. And then you look at England, you kind of go, well, they can play well, I guess. They do for their club.
I think two things, Ollie. One, if England do win it, make absolutely no mistake, it can be the scrappiest thing ever. The country will still go absolutely king mental. There's no doubt about that. The second thing is that I think that people look at this England squad and be like, yeah, the sheer amount of footballers that can individually win a game is just insane. Like Harry Kane, Bellingham, Phil Foden hasn't really done much this tournament, but there's no doubt he could win a game for England by himself. Saka kind of did tonight. Then, like I say, you bring in like Tony off the bench and Trent Alexander-Arnold and Palmer, like three that just stepped up, no problem to smash penalties. So yeah, there might not be like a romantic look back on this England side, but I do think that people will think, wow, that was a squad with so many individual match winners.
Well, that's why I think it will be a romantic look back, because everyone will forget the individual matches, and people will suddenly, the narrative will turn to, do you remember that gritty performance against Slovakia? Got over the line in extra time eventually. Do you remember the Swiss? Do you remember going into the Swiss and how worried we were about that great Swiss side? Probably one of the best Swiss sides we've seen. But the mighty Lions fought through that. Went down with 13 minutes to go and they still got there. You can reel off that team sheet in 20 years' time and people will go, God, yeah, how good was that? Stones,
True.
Bellingham, Foden, Rice, Kane, the great Harry Kane, perhaps at his peak after he moved to Germany. And everybody will forget how bad it was.
And Ollie, people will also be saying, and Southgate, the genius, played 4 games and it wasn't happening. So he just pulled this, tactical rabbit out of the hat and switched it up and went 3-5-2. And everyone was like, wow, this is incredible. And then he brought 3 players off the bench. All 3 scored their pens. What a man manager. So, yeah, I mean, like, look, history is written by winners or whatever the quote is. Yeah.
But Gareth stuck to his guns when all the media was baying for him to go early during the tournament and change everything. And then when he did, he had tactical nuance about it and really structured that side. I mean, that is how it will be. Christ, that's what we've had in these last 2 games between the 90th and like the 96th minute or whatever. It's been England are a joke. Aren't we great at being able to pull ourselves out of these situations? You think history in 20 years' time is going to make that any worse? 100% it will.
All right, let's a couple of sports I want to touch on, Ollie, before we talk about the F1. Just wanted to talk about tennis very briefly. So, Ollie, we've all been asked to do something via WhatsApp, and we've said, yes, absolutely, I'll be there. And then we've bailed on that, right? Like everyone's done that. Probably people do it multiple times throughout the year, social events, like work, like things happen, life happens. Everyone does that. But I just find this really funny. Like, and I understand both sides of it. So Andy Murray, couldn't, obviously been really injured. We talked about in last week's pod. His career is coming to an end. Decided to play the doubles with his brother, got knocked out first round. And he sent a WhatsApp to Emma Raducanu, said, do you want to play in the mixed doubles? And what a kind of a wonderful thing. Like Andy Murray at the end of his career, Emma Raducanu at the beginning of her career. Great for the Brits watching on. And Andy Murray's apparently sent her a WhatsApp at like 10 at night, said, do you want to play in the mixed doubles with me? And Emma Raducanu just sent a text back being like, sure, let's do it. And Emma Raducanu now has gone through like 3 rounds of Wimbledon in the singles and decided she can't play the mixed doubles with Andy Murray. And there's just something a little bit comical about Andy Murray's Wimbledon career ending, presumably via WhatsApp, back to him being like, oh, sorry, Andy, actually, no, mate, I can't make it. And he thought he was going to step out on the green grass once more, and he just couldn't. And look, I get Raducanu. She wants to concentrate on the singles. But, like, if Andy Murray says, can you play mixed doubles? And you say yes, you kind of got to do it, I think.
If Andy Murray had done this to Emma Raducanu, and the roles were reversed, it was Raducanu's swan song, and Andy Murray, a young male tennis player, had bailed on her, do you think the reaction would be as like, oh, it's kind of funny or whatever, or would people be really irate? And this is like a super hot button question, obviously, because of, there are some people that could twist this into like, wow, that's just, male and female, the sexist, misogynistic narrative and everything. But I do think it would be slightly different.
Yeah, I think it's got more to do with just a player on the up and a player at the end, rather than like gender. And it's a great question, Ollie, and I don't know, and nobody will really know because so much of the stuff's so like ingrained, and it's like an impossible question and stuff. And for all I know, Emma Raducanu's wrist is causing her trouble, and she wants to be fit for the singles, and I get that. I think it's a really interesting question, which I actually wouldn't dare answer. But I think
good swerve. I like that. Yeah.
But I don't know, like Andy Murray's, he's asked her, forget gender for a moment, like a very senior, end of his career, British icon, household name that has won Wimbledon, has asked someone, will you play in the mixed doubles? And if you can't play, or if you think, oh, actually, I really want to concentrate on singles, just say no, because that's like his last chance to get out at Wimbledon, right?
No, because...
I mean, I say that, Ollie, he'll be playing the doubles next year. Don't worry about it. He always retires and he comes back, as we mentioned on last week's pod. He'll be there next year. He'll get the wild card.
Be another montage of Murray moments for this
100%.
year. Just with, like, another crying fit on centre court or something.
Love the Murray tears, man. Love the Murray tears. I mean, he could sell them for big bucks, I reckon.
I have no problem. Oh, what, like the women that sell like their bath water on the internet and stuff like that. Yeah, Murray tears just in a little plastic bag.
If Andy Murray collected his tears while he was talking to Sue Barker and sold it, I reckon like a small capsule would at least go for 10 grand. The absolute minimum.
And that is why Emma Raducanu should have played with Andy Murray. Because the only reason she was going to play with Andy Murray is for that moment, to be alongside him, his swan song, his departure from Wimbledon. That's the only reason that she has for doing this, right?
And she said that as well, Ollie. She said that, yeah.
So I would have respected Emma Raducanu even more than just bailing on him, which I think is actually quite funny, and I have no problems with it whatsoever because she is a girl who's just got back into loving tennis once again after winning a US Open, going through an emotional roller coaster since then. She's now actually playing tennis because she enjoys it, wants to be out there. You can see it in her tennis here at Wimbledon. I've only caught a couple of her matches, and they're only the only matches I've actually really caught, and by accident as well. But she has been excellent in them. Really, really strong, really kind of authoritative on court, which is something I don't think we've seen since that US Open from her. Why would you waste your time aside from being maybe alongside for the photo op of like Murray departing out of Wimbledon and this kind of passing the baton moment that England tennis will have been putting pressure on her to do? Her management team, I'm sure, will have put some like pressure on her to, do that, yeah, definitely. And then, actually, no, I want to focus on this. So the only way I reckon that she should have done it is if, during that swan song moment, after their final match, she'd collected the tears and sold them herself for an extra like 10, 20 grand.
But Ollie, I hear all that, but isn't saying yes on WhatsApp like the Gen Z handshake? Like isn't there something in someone saying, can you do something? And you say yes. And then they're kind of, this isn't just like do you want to go for a pint on Tuesday? This is like, do you want to be part of my final match at Wimbledon? And she said yes. And then it's like, oh, actually, old man, like I'm kind of doing okay by myself at the moment. So like, I don't know. Also, I don't think she would have had pressure on her, mate. I think she's her own woman. And I think she's a professional athlete. She's very aware of what she can do, what she has to do. And in fact, I actually think there's something like quite brave about saying no. Like, she's turned around to Andy Murray and said, actually, no. And it's quite sort of brave. It's a bit rude, but it's also quite brave.
Oh, I mean, it could easily have been like a PR disaster of, Raducanu turns her back on Murray, what a awful woman she is, not giving him his moment, all that kind of stuff. I don't see it that way at all. I just see it as an individual in an individual sport looking out for her individual singles career at Wimbledon this year. The funny thing is you said just then the WhatsApp message is an agreement, is like the Gen Z handshake, right? Yet you started this topic of conversation about we've all had moments that we've agreed to do something on WhatsApp and then gone, I'm not going to do it actually. Because it isn't a handshake. There's no eye contact. There's no physical kind of...
No, it's because I'm just like, obviously my moral fiber needs some strengthening, Ollie, as it all does. No, it still is like, if someone says, can you do something? Can you carve out this period of time? It's just, so you think it just, why? Because the disappearing messages that WhatsApp has now just makes it all irrelevant.
What was the joke? Like, you can say anything during sex and it doesn't matter because it's during sex, it's in the throngs of passion. And so you could say anything on WhatsApp because it just flitters away into the cloud, and maybe if she's
stored on a Chinese server somewhere, but yeah.
If she's got automatically deleting messages, that message never got sent, in my opinion. That yes never got sent.
Murray's a wise head. He screenshotted that, and then in his autobiography, it'll be like page 3 or something like that.
No, in all seriousness, I think it's sad for Andy Murray not to get his moment because he is a staple, an icon now of British tennis, has been for years over years. He has been the only British player that's come close to matching what is, without a doubt, the greatest generation of male tennis players in Nadal, Federer and Djokovic. And there have been points in this time where Andy Murray has been up there as an equal number 4 to those three. That is one of the most impressive sporting achievements to even muscle into that we've had in not just British tennis, but arguably British sport.
I mean, a lad from Dunblane. Absolutely. I mean, it bleeds into, we don't have time for this today, but it bleeds into the wider topic of like great sporting parents, as in like Judy Murray, not 1, 2 brothers playing like elite tennis, and like Jamie Murray's won like slams in doubles, and obviously Andy had the career he had, and then you sort of look at is it Richard Williams? I
was going to say Richard Williams kind of kills Judy Murray because it's like, hold my beer. I've got 2 of the greatest female tennis players of all time. Yeah, Tiger Woods, his dad, forcing him.
But 2, man. I think so. I think Judy Murray's more impressive than Tiger Woods' dad, just because it's 2. Like same with Richard Williams, as you say. He's okay. So Richard Williams is the GOAT, but what about the Neville parents?
Neville parents, you've got the
2 brothers and the daughter
as well.
Say again?
The Sedin parents, who are Scandinavian ice hockey players that have they are peak NHL players, like iconic probably Hall of Famers kind of thing. Two brothers playing at the same time on the ice. I mean, just quickly, I don't know, this is on the family topic. Did you see the thing about LeBron James and the LA Lakers and drafting his son?
No, hit me.
So LeBron James is playing for the LA Lakers. He's getting to the end of his career, and they had the NBA draft last week, or in the last 7 days, and the Lakers drafted with their second pick in the draft LeBron James's son, even though he's meant to be a not ready to play in the NBA type player. Like, all the scouting reports, he's not good enough. He's probably not going to be there. But LeBron James is like talking to the GM. He's got his best mate to be the new head coach, who he does a podcast with. It's like you being the star athlete and me being a retired athlete, and then you getting me to coach your team. And then you get your son to be picked by the executive board to be the next player for the team. Like, it's nepotism on an unbelievable way. If you want to get into like family in sports, that's one to, I think, discuss at another time. But going back to the tennis, yeah, I don't know. I do think it's sad. I think it's genuinely sad for Andy Murray to be one of the greatest British athletes, probably up there with a Redgrave kind of thing, and what Murray's been able to achieve at such a difficult time.
Yeah. Like, I don't feel that sorry for him, like insane career, unlimited wealth, beautiful wife, 5 kids. Like, he's done okay. Yeah.
No, but Wimbledon's special.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. Like, I think, but he'll play at Wimbledon next year. There'll be a wild card, and he'll have another 3 surgeries. And he just fucking loves tennis, man. He'll be there. He'll get the wild card. I don't doubt it. I honestly don't doubt it.
Does Raducanu have to win it to prove it right?
Dave, Windsor prediction time. The biggest and best British sporting moment of the summer will not be England wrapping their hands around the European Championship trophy, but it will be Emma Raducanu on the 13th of July, winning the ladies singles championship at Wimbledon. There we go. Her draw, Ollie, is so open, and she's just in that zone. She's got the look behind the eyes, and now she's elbowed Andy Murray out the way, like sacked up the mixed doubles. She's just streamlined now. I haven't seen her play like this, obviously, since the US Open. I mean, no one has. It's not a unique take because she hasn't really, done much in reality on the tennis court since then. So that's Windsor's prediction for the next week or so.
I like putting your neck out on the line on it. I mean, it's a difficult one to make, considering how difficult it is to win a Grand Slam, particularly in a women's division that kind of tends to throw up way more surprises and kind of shock results than you get in the men's tennis side of the draw. So I'd love it. I don't want other people to be doing what you're doing, because I want Raducanu to play tennis because she enjoys it and not have that pressure, because I think that's the thing that has really been tough on her. And people like Dave Windsor are actually going to end up breaking poor young athletes like Emma Raducanu, and he's going to sit there and laugh in his flat, and he'll be there writing the sporting obituary of how she could have been great, but it was that year in 2024 at Wimbledon when she buckled under the pressure.
When she played that mixed doubles with Andy and like hurt her wrist. And all right, that's enough tennis. Ollie, tell me how significant is it that the podium at Silverstone is an all British affair? All 3, right?
It's phenomenal. It's something I didn't think I'd ever see in my lifetime. It's especially with the dominance that Red Bull have had with Max Verstappen. We're just used to the Dutch national anthem being played out every single Sunday. To have 3 British drivers up there, one of them being arguably the greatest driver of all time in Lewis Hamilton, but the other 2 to be the next steps. We're talking about just a moment ago, the Murray handing over the baton of English tennis to Emma Raducanu to be the face of it. But this is like Lewis Hamilton looking across and seeing the next 2 Lewis Hamiltons in a sport where obviously it has a great history with Great Britain. Many of the teams are based in this country. Obviously, Silverstone, Brands Hatch, as it used to be a Formula One circuit, have indelible links with the origins, start, and the future of Formula One. And to have 2 of the best young drivers at their home Grand Prix stood alongside arguably the best driver of all time. Now it just needs to happen on Sunday. It's lovely to have it on a Saturday, but it's about what happens on a Sunday. If you have that as a podium, forget the red arrows just going over. We need like the red arrows followed by a balloon of Paddington Bear coming across the sky, and then we have the trooping of the colours out there on the grid after the race as the podium celebrations are taking place. It would be arguably one of the most British victories. It's very patriotic, this podcast, isn't it? It's getting real.
It has become so, yeah. Yeah,
but it would be an incredible British sporting moment again to have. I don't think it's ever happened.
If the top three were all Brits at Silverstone.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever happened as three British drivers on the podium, which would be incredible.
I'll double check it, Ollie, but let me ask you this, okay? So that's tomorrow, the 7th of July.
Yeah.
If that happened and it was an all British podium at Silverstone, then Raducanu 6 days later won Wimbledon on the 13th and England won the Euros on the 14th. Would that be the greatest week in the history of English sport?
Well, the greatest, the only thing that comes close to it, I
2012?
think, yeah, is Super Saturday 2012, and that was one day. So this would be 7 days.
It will
and in those 7 days, you'd have to watch England.
8 days.
8 days, sorry, yeah. But in those 8 days, you'd have to watch England also get through a semi-final, which would keep the momentum running. So I reckon you would. Yeah. Yeah, I think that would trump Super Saturday. Super Saturday was incredible, but you've got the...
It was just one thing, though, wasn't it? Really? The Olympics.
And look, it was on home soil, but you'd have the F1 and Wimbledon on home soil. Then you'd have valiant lions going to foreign seas and finding victory on the European stage, a stage that we fought to leave if you were, getting into your vote reform kind of coat on and stuff like that. So yeah, it would trump Super Saturday. It would be the greatest sporting week England and Great Britain has ever seen. If Raducanu wins Wimbledon, you have 3 British drivers on the podium for tomorrow, and then England win it.
The odds on that will be absolute. I mean, I bet you'd get 10,000, 20.
I'd love to. I'd put a couple of quid on it. There is no reason why it can't happen. If you look at it, Mercedes. Okay, let's take the Formula One first, very quickly. Mercedes are probably the third best team on the grid, right? Red Bull have got internal problems right now, and Lando Norris is arguably the driver who's been consistently competing with Max Verstappen. Mercedes have 2 great young British driver in George Russell and a legendary driver in Lewis Hamilton. So all 3 of those drivers have the ability to win races. They've all won races in the past, and they have cars that can compete at the top end of the field. So it just takes one moment of an error from Max Verstappen to suddenly make that a real possibility. The Raducanu thing might be as difficult as the Formula One to happen because there's still other players. It's not completely in our own hands, etc. Like it kind of is, but you don't feel
the banker is England. That's done.
Yeah.
I mean, at least that's the most likely of the 3 things, probably, right? I mean, I don't know my F1 as well as you, Ollie, but
it's definitely England winning a major tournament with this squad is definitely more likely than 3 British drivers on the podium at Silverstone. Okay. You know, I was meant to be there today as well. I was gutted. I was meant to be at Silverstone, and I was up in Northumberland with the idyllic British countryside, and then I saw the result come through, and I was like, because I was at Silverstone last year when Lando Norris went on Saturday was fastest, and the crowd noise was insane. He went on pole. 30 seconds later, Max Verstappen's car comes by, pips him, takes first place for the race on Sunday. But those 30 seconds, when Silverstone for a moment dreamt that they were going to have a British driver on the front row, was just like insane. And then I can't imagine what the noise would have been like today. It would have been a cacophony of noise of like 120,000 people. Would have been one of the greatest moments for a British Formula One fan to experience if they'd been there. Yeah.